Or you can introduce
No.
Kip.
Kip's taking care of it. Is that the only one we have?
The cross country's gonna come to next meeting.
Okay.
Good evening. On behalf of the Metropolitan School District of Martinsville School Board, we thank you for being here in person or virtually. I'm Matt Hankins, President of the Martinsville School Board. To my left is Heather Staggs, Vice President, Luke Jackson, Secretary, to her left, Dan Conway, Board Member, to his left, and Board Member Jackie Decker to his left. To my right is Superintendent Eric Boland, and to his right is Assistant to the Superintendent, Mrs. Susie Lips. Would we all please stand and join me in first saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the moment of silence, I would like us to remember and think of Dr. William Roberson, who passed away, who was an interim superintendent for us, and also all the hurricane victims of Helena and the Hurricane Milton in Florida and the Southeast. Amen. Mr. Boland, now we have the recognition.
Recognition, yes. Mr. Staggs, would you step up to the microphone, please, and introduce your team here tonight? Could you hear back there okay? They're able to hear right here in the front and
Right
face
in the middle.
everybody there. Yes.
Well, we're honored this evening. Is that on?
Yeah, it's on, but it doesn't sound loud to me. I don't know if I'm having issues.
Testing.
Let's try this. Was that better?
I couldn't hear Matt. Dan couldn't hear Matt. I couldn't hear Matt. They
You're picking it up online. They can hear. So people
Testing,
hear.
testing.
Test, 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 test.
No, it doesn't loud.
No, it's not.
You're going to kind of speak up, Kip.
I can do it. I can
All
bring
right.
out the coach voice. I can pull this off.
There we go.
They're hearing you online. These people, if we can get them to hear you, we're good.
Well, we've got a celebration.
That's
and
better.
We've got a celebration, and we've got an opportunity to recognize some special athletes and coaches. On September 23rd, the Artesian girls golf team added to the trophy case at MHS by capturing the IHSA sectional at Cascades Golf Course by 8 shots over Bloomington South. The last sectional golf championship for the Arties was in 2018. A special moment for the team was on the way home. The Arties were greeted by the Martinsville Fire Department and the MSD of Martinsville Police for a festive drive around the square with many people honking and pausing to celebrate along the way with them. I'm sure it's a memory that the coaches and our athletes will remember for a long time. The following week, the Artesians placed 7th in the IHSA Regional at the Legends in Franklin. The Arties finished 3rd in the conference in a very competitive mid-state conference. And during the regular season, they enjoyed wins over Bloomington South, Bloomington North, Columbus East, to name a few. We are very proud of the girls, the coaches, as their overall improvement from the beginning of the year to the end was 30 to 40 shots better, which is a tribute to their dedication, commitment, and willingness to get better through the course of the season. I'm proud to recognize our girls golf team, the school board, and our community. Congratulations to the Artesians girls golf team, Coach Dearlove, Coach Payne, and all of our players. Great job.
Now they can give a speech. They do not want to give a speech? We can do an I believe if you want.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Coach.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comments regarding agenda items. Courtney, do we have any? Okay, would that person come up? And let me read our public speaking message on agenda items. A visitor that wishes to speak regarding an agenda item may do so at the discretion of the president of the school board. The visitor shall be required to state his or her full name and be given the opportunity to speak, not to exceed 3 minutes per person. In an effort to fairly adhere to the 3-minute guidelines for all speakers, we'll present a timer on the interactive panels. Board members will listen to the speakers but not engage in back and forth conversation. Board feedback or answers to questions will be provided before the next board meeting or at the beginning of the next board meeting. At the conclusion of 3 minutes, speakers will be asked to return to their seats. It shall not be permissible to orally present or discuss complaints against individual employees of the MSD of Martinsville at any Board of Trustees meeting. Such charges or complaints shall be presented to the Board of Trustees in writing and shall be signed by the person making the charge or complaint. Boisterous conduct shall not be permitted at any meeting of the Board of Trustees, nor will any defamatory or abusive remarks be tolerated. We appreciate everyone's civility in maintaining a business order as it has been the practice at school board meetings.
Thank you. My name's Mary Beth Polson, and I am a mother of 2 graduates of Martinsville. One of my graduates was a teacher in the MSD of Martinsville for several years. I have a lot of friends who have been teachers, are teachers. And I come tonight to ask for the board to provide clarity in a social media setting or something. Over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, I've been attending the meetings in person rather than watching online. And I noticed in the board packet this month that there is some information on resolution 467 and 469. And those are the resolutions for the education fund, the debt services fund, and the operations fund. What troubles me is in many of the meetings, we've talked about not being able to attract teachers or have teacher retention because of their salaries. And I'm concerned when on resolution 69, if I'm understanding it correctly, and again, I would appreciate clarification on social media or maybe perhaps at the next board meeting. But it looks like in 2025, for resolution 69, we're going to be using $4,800,000 out of our education fund, which is used for the teachers' salaries in other areas. So my concern is, that's like 14% if I understand our budget, which I did print that off. And that, if I read it correctly, is $59,802,972. So with the resolution 467 given the permission for the board or the board's trustees to move that money out of the education fund into these other major accounts, and then resolution 469 spelling out for the balance of this year for $2,400,000 and then $4,800,000 for 2025 calendar year. I'm just wondering what part of the budget are we shortfall, or do we have a shortfall where we have to move that kind of money out of the money that we so desperately need to pay our teachers? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Polson. Do we have any? That's it? Okay.
Hang on here a second. We could move that up if the board is willing to adjust the agenda or make a motion to do that. We'll move it
Make
up.
a motion, we move that up immediately following our consent agenda.
Okay. There's been a motion to move the donation of, which donation?
Which
It was
donation is
the,
it?
Do you see on the agenda which one you're speaking of?
They said they're here for the drum line donation, but I don't see it on here, but maybe it's labeled a different way.
No, I don't.
I don't see it.
Mm-mm.
Eric, it's not on the agenda, that's what I'm here about.
Are you doing something at the end in public comments?
No.
I guess to help us clarify, was there a donation that the district received that we should have had on the agenda?
No,
No.
the district was unaware of the donation.
Oh, so this
Oh,
is
okay.
something
Oh.
that's,
okay,
Okay.
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 okay,
Okay.
that's okay. We didn't know. It's
We
news.
didn't know,
Yeah.
we're
Yay.
learning it too.
Okay, so if you want, you could still hear it if you wish as a board, but you have to vote on that. And we would have, are you the one presenting? Okay,
Yeah.
we'd allow you to present and then they would approve. Are you all okay with that? I'll let
Yeah,
you-
I'll amend my motion to allow them to present the donation to the board to accept after our consent agenda passes.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second to,
What I said.
what, you amended that?
We're gonna let you
Yeah.
move up so you can get out of here.
So basically, yes. All in favor of the motion that Luke presented and Heather seconded, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. So now we can have you come up to speak
Consent
After
agenda.
Yep, after- we gotta
after
have
the
hearing.
consent,
We
after
have
the
to do-
consent agenda.
We have to do the hearing first.
Yes, and we have to do the hearing first. So it'll be a little bit. Sorry, I'm having to look at my notes again, so I apologize. Okay, now we want to open the additional appropriations public hearing. So we're going to open that for hearing. And also, Jacob, would you like to speak on that for the appropriations?
So I know we've been through a number of public hearings at the last several meetings, and this overlaps quite a bit, but this is the process by which you take public comment on the appropriation of proceeds of the bonds that would come to you all from the sale of any of the project kind of property to the building corporation. We've included the large not to exceed, it'll be something probably less than that. But this is the sort of makes you follow the same process you'd follow for your budget to pull in funds for your budget. So that's all this is. So with that, go ahead and take public comment.
Okay. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on the additional appropriations? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion, Matt, to adjourn this portion of the meeting.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to close the hearing for the additional appropriations. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have the donation from the drumline, correct? Yes. Yes,
Please,
you-
that way
please.
the
We can hear
virtual
you.
world can hear you.
My mouth is big enough. I don't need to talk on this thing. The Peregrine Homecoming Festival Committee has tried for many, many years to get the Marching Artisans to come down and participate in our festival parade. And this year we had a board member that came to a couple different board meetings. And we didn't get all of the marching artisans, but we did get the drum line. And we were very appreciative for that. So with that being said, and I'm here on behalf of the Homecoming Festival Committee, but with that being said, we have a thank you card for them. And we also have a $300 check for the marching artisans.
Thank you.
And I do have some fellers here to present this to them. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Gotcha.
Matt, I make a motion, we accept and approve that donation.
Well, she's already got the check.
Yeah. Parker, I'll take that back.
Thank you very much.
I have a motion to approve that donation.
I'll second that.
A motion and second to approve the donation from the Perrigan Homecoming to the Artisan Drumline. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have student field trips and professional travel, and there are none. So
Correct.
we go on to curriculum, instruction, and assessment report. Mrs. Lips.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. The Indiana Apprenticeship Program, this month, the district's e-learning director, Jenny Oakley, the Martinsville High School Guidance Director, Cammie Hyde, and I met with Home Bank CEO Lisa Arnold and Senator Rod Bray regarding the newly established Indiana Apprentice Program. This program's focus is vocational networking for our Martinsville High School junior and senior students so they can earn certifications for future employment and gain valuable work experience while earning money through their apprenticeships. As this program is rolled out, I'll share more information later. Better Community Coalition in Morgan County. As a representative of the MSD of Martinsville, I serve as a member of the Better Community Coalition. This month, we discussed the future grant funding for businesses and organizations who positively impact citizens in Martinsville. The mission for the coalition is a future where Morgan County is Central Indiana's preferred place to live, work, and play. A place where all residents thrive and where collective impact becomes our second nature, resulting in a better community. Anti-bullying campaign. During October, all schools in the Metropolitan School District of Martinsville are participating in a district-wide anti-bullying campaign. The purpose of the district's anti-bullying campaign is to educate all students about the various forms of bullying and the steps students and staff can take to help stop bullying. The long-term goal is to eliminate bullying from our schools and to better provide a learning environment where students respect and treat one another with more kindness. The national call to action to prevent bullying is this. Too often, we are silent when we see bullying take place. Silent about the hurt bullying causes, and silent when we hear bullying dismissed as just banter. It doesn't have to be this way. Of course, we won't like everyone, and we don't always agree, but we can choose respect and unity. Together, as a community, we can make a difference and take a stand against bullying. From the playground to Parliament, and from our phones to our homes, let's make a noise about bullying. Thank you, and that's it for this evening. We have a newsletter that went out to the school community, an anti-bullying newsletter, and also This is also Cyber Bullying Month too, and we'll be sending a newsletter later this month with regard to that topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lips. Next on the agenda, we have old business. Eric?
Okay, sort of timely. I had prepared something here for the audience virtually and also here in person, dealing with the budget, dealing with funding, because there have been questions online about, okay, kind of like what Ms. Polson talked about here this evening. So that's the timely part. So we can try to give some clarification so people understand the overall arching goal that we're trying to accomplish, and then also understand where we are as a district, okay? So could you put the slide up there with the silos, please? Okay, as you take a look at this, we had put this out on social media, a few weeks back, but it shows, let me start by saying this. It shows that what we have for schools is nothing like what you have at home in your budget. It's nothing like what you have in a business with your budget. One thing that schools have to deal with that you don't in the business world and also at home is State Board of Accounts and all those particulars that you have to follow. We get audited every year. We go through one form of an audit or another. And there is only 3 silos that we get school funding in. The first silo is the education fund. And that's the one Mrs. Polson alluded to, which pays teachers. The education fund is the only silo that we can pay teachers out of. And that gets filled one way by the state. And it's based on ADM count, which is the student count. You get your student count, they give us so much money per student, and that goes into the education fund. That's where we pay teachers out of, is the education fund. We cannot use the operations fund silo. We cannot use the debt service, long-term debt silo. We can only use the education fund. What Martinsville has historically had, and that's one of the challenges that this board has undertaken over the last several years, is to shift our burden from the operations fund, that's tax derived. Debt service is long-term debt. That's where you take out big projects. It goes in the debt service column. We have traditionally in Martinsville had a very low debt service fund. If you remember, when I walked in, I've shared this publicly from this dais. When I walked in, we were like a little over 16 cents. That was our debt service rate. That's where we were. Now, it doesn't mean anything to anybody sitting out there. I can just give you for instance, at the State Board or the School Boards Association Conference, I was sitting in one of their concurrent sessions, and a CFO from a nearby district was talking about their debt service was up, their debt service only was up over $1, and they were looking to try to bring theirs down to 79 cents. Our combined rate is 79 cents. That's where you add operations plus debt service gives you the combined rate. Our debt service rate right now is 39 cents. Here's a neighboring district that's up over $1 on debt service, and they're wanting to take it down to 79 cents to give their people relief. We're at 39 cents. We were at 16 whenever I took over. This board, over the last couple of years, raised that debt service so we can start maintaining buildings out of debt service, long-term debt. It's like going to buy a house or going to buy a car. You're not going to go buy a house for $350,000 and write a check tomorrow for it. You're going to finance it long-term. You're not going to go buy a $34,000 car, and most of us can't go and just write a check for $34,000 tomorrow and walk out with that car. You finance it. What we have been doing is doing big projects out of the operations fund. That's tax derived, but it's not long-term. That's yearly. We've been doing that, and that caused, or has caused, since 2017, for Martinsville to fall further and further behind because we have always had to transfer 15% from education fund to the operations fund to keep it solvent. You see what's going on. Trying to explain it in a way that everybody can understand it with just real dollars. The more we put into debt service, long-term debt, and do big projects out of it, the less we use operations, which means we don't have to transfer as much from education to operations. This year's, where Mrs. Polson alluded to, was less amount than what they're looking at for next year. We'll cut into that one too. However, the cuts that we've made here over the last 3 months with our financial team and with our focusing on trying to save the education fund, we're actually going to be able to, even though we have dropped, I think we're at 91 to 94 students, depending on how the 3 students who are being battled between us and another district, we're down at least 91 students this year. That means we're losing nearly $800,000. With the cuts we've made and what we've been able to do, we didn't have to transfer as much from education to operations. We're going to be able to give raises this year, even though we went down. That's because of what we've been doing. We're not there yet. That's why we're doing these projects. We're trying to take the pressure off of operations, move it to long-term debt, and do projects out of debt service, out of long-term debt. That's why we put that little line underneath there that says long-term debt so people can understand it, because nobody understands what debt service is, because you don't have that in your household budget and you don't have that in the business world. But that's what it is. It's long-term debt. We have made a conscious effort to try to do projects and pay for it out of long-term debt, out of debt service. This board has approved the bond. The last year's bond is the reason that we were able to not transfer as much money this year from education to operations, because of that long-term debt bond that we did last year, which was part of safety and some building improvements. Just moving that and using that bond in that silo has allowed us to not move as much from education to operations and allow us to be in a position to give raises to teachers. That's been our goal and our effort all this time. That's an arduous task, because whenever we moved from 15 or 16 cents up to 39 cents, you remember the uproar that we had a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the heat we took on social media. And we were just trying to put the combined rate at 79 cents, which equals our neighbor to the north, which is well behind our other county neighbor, Eminence, which is at 92 cents, which is well behind our neighbor further, which is Monrovia, at $1.07. We're at 79. And we have people complaining that our taxes are too high from a school district standpoint. Not worried about our other county neighbors who pay more, but we've been in this cycle of being okay with not having debt and not having a tax rate to support the schools. We've been doing it out of operations, which cheats our bus drivers, our custodians, our maintenance personnel, which in turn causes us to transfer money from education to operations so they can be paid raises, because we were using operations to maintain buildings, not using it for their payroll, and we cheated the education fund. That's been our goal as a board and as an administrative team and a financial team, to shift that. That's why we're doing these projects. That's why we're shifting to debt service and long-term debt. That's why we're being diligent and frugal in all of that. But the overall arching goal is to protect the education fund so that we quit losing teachers like Mrs. Polson's daughter, who's one of the best teachers that I ever worked with. And we lost her because she stole her to the business world, because she was able to pay her much more than what we could pay. And that's a fact. And we have teachers that go to Bloomington and go to Franklin and go to Plainfield because they can get $10,000 more on the same line. The reason we don't lose as many is because they like our culture, they like our people, they like our students, they like our families, they like our community. And we keep a lot of them because of that very thing. but we also lose some because that's a tight pull. That's a tough thing to combat when you're a new student or a new teacher making $44,500 and you're going to go to a neighboring school district and make $10,000 more. That's almost 25% of their salary.
Who most passed referendums to do
Yes.
that, I might add.
We have, talked about that. The operating referendums is a referendum to fill the education fund that's above the tax cap because they cap us. In order for us to put any more money, except the state saying we're going to give you more money next year per student, which this year was 1.7%, I think inflation outpaced that considerably, but we're still going to be able to give raises because of what we've done financially. The only other way to put money in that education fund to teachers, I should say, the only way to pay teachers more is to pass an operating referendum, which is an extra tax above the cap that they allow us to do. And I think the last number, I think Ms. Deckard shared with me, was 51 of the 290 districts have passed those because they find that it is necessary to pay teachers more. But we don't get it from the education fund, and many of them are like us, where they have to shift 15% over to the operations because they're in similar predicaments. We're not unique, but we're trying to combat it. That's the hand we've been dealt. We're going to play the cards the best we can. And I am really proud that here in the next month, we'll come out with the bargaining agreement and stuff, and we're going to be able to actually give raises because of what we have done. If we would have done this the way we had done it for the since 2017, 18, 19 timeframe up into early 20s, I got here in 22, 23. And that's when we started changing this path with the board's help. And I appreciate that. That is allowing us to do the raises. The bonds allow us to do that because we're shifting it to debt service. We want to be able to pay our people, and we want to pay them a good wage that they can stay here with. That's our overarching goal. So we'll get some more information from Mr. Staley from Baker Tilly and try to put some more out on social media. I think that'd be helpful because it's hard to understand it. It really is. And it's interesting. You sort of hit perfectly with what I wanted to talk about tonight. So thank you for that. I think you can go to the next slide. This one just encapsulates, this is our education fund. The green is salaries, the red's benefits, 90, if you add that 21.79 and the 70.97, add those together, we're well over 91% of the education fund goes to teachers and salaries. The other little part, you're getting into supplies. And there's been an allegation that we're holding back supplies. We told our teachers, and they've complied, don't go spend money just because there's money in the account. Go get what you need for our principals and our teachers. Get what you need. That way we can save the supply part of the education fund so we can give it to teachers. That's what they did over the last 3 months. They complied because we became staples in our closets. Teachers buy stuff that they bought last year and they just keep adding it to it. I did it whenever I was a teacher and they've done it. So we tightened that up a little bit, worked with the principals and the teachers. That's why we have money for salary increases, because they've done that. We will continue to do that as we move forward. And we'll put this out on social media for you guys too, so you can share that and explain it to people, explain that silo system. Or if they have a question, please tell them to contact us. Because anytime that you go shifting money or something like that, people always wonder, well, what are you doing shifting wise? You have to do statutory requirements to have appropriations to spend any dollars, and you have to do that. Wealthy districts, they will shift 15% to operations so they can move it to rainy day because they don't have to use it, but they put it in rainy day. We're not in that position because we use it to maintain buildings. So that's our goal. I'm sorry I went that long, but I think it's important.
It is
for
important.
people to hear.
I'm glad you talked about it because we are allowed to transfer up to 15% A lot of schools do it. We're not unique. So it's not like MSD of Martinsville is doing something that some other schools are not. I think it's also important to note that in 2019, when the state changed from general fund to education operation fund, they didn't really take into account some of those positions that were being paid out of education fund, which is really in a sense why they allow the 15% transfer to begin with, because they didn't take into account all those positions that had been paid out of the general fund to begin with. So I think that's important. And yes, we try to hold that less than 15% if we can. But, as Mr. Bowen alluded, unlike, or just like, I guess, in our households, there's a cost. The gas for the buses go up. Paper goods go up. Food cost goes up. So just like we feel that pinch at home, we feel that here at the school district as well. So I just want to throw that out there because it's not like we're doing something and we're transferring and trying to keep it away from teachers. That's not what the goal is.
Right, and I think a good point too is that started back in 2018, 2019. We didn't get on the board to start correcting that till 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
2021. So that's what we've been working with, trying to improve.
And if I'm correct too, part of the reason for doing this resolution is just so it's there as a tool. So, I mean, the hope, I think, all of everyone is that we transfer zero eventually. But the reason is 15% is just so it has that legal parameter that we have. We're not necessarily going to, and I hope we don't have to use, 4.8 million. But if something drastic came up, you think, worst nightmare situation, if you don't have that allotted already, you're out of luck.
That's a very good point. There was one rumor that was going around was that the board and our administration had misappropriated $6 million from turf project to miss a bond payment. It did not happen. So I'll tell you that up
Well, there
front.
was a missed bond payment,
Yeah,
but not in this.
No, it wasn't in this. It was not
2020.
anything with
Yeah.
our project in any way, shape, or form. And what they actually had done was, it was a listing whenever they did a bond in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, well before any of us on this dais. And they started the bond, but didn't start the first payment and didn't have the appropriation for it. Just what we're talking about with the appropriation here. So the appropriation did not precede the bond. So they didn't have the authority to do it. So they had to go back and make that payment. They had the money, but they didn't have the appropriation. So they had to do an appropriation, additional appropriation to correct it. It wasn't anything that they did that didn't have the money, but they didn't have the appropriation. So that's why the appropriation goes in. So the authority is there for whatever we have to actually
And it
utilize.
wasn't $6 million. The appropriation after we got on the board, it was a $385,000 bond payment that had been missed. But
Yes.
we allocated the money in the budget where we could. And this is where I think people don't understand, like you can't just take it from certain, funds and say, here, I'm going to pay it from here. You have to ask permission. And we ended up asking for an additional appropriation for $61,000 at that time to make up the difference from that 385,000. So I don't know where the $6 million figure came from, but that's not true.
Any other, we'll take any questions. I'm okay with it. I
I'll
think it's an
share our
important
first-
thing.
I'll share our first year on the board. We got, well, it was within the first couple of months, we got a letter from the state, and we were dinged because we transferred over 15% from education fund to operations, which started us thinking, well, what are we doing here? Why, how's this happening? What is going on here? And that started the whole conversation. Well, we don't want to transfer anything if we don't have to.
No.
But we have to make things run properly. So that is kind of what started all of this, is because we got in trouble. We, not.
Well, the district
Yes,
and
the
you,
district, yes, they had transferred too much.
Yep.
So that's.
and you're on
yeah.
a naughty list with the state, and you also have to publicize that on your web site and things, which we did.
Yep.
So that's,
Yeah.
how we started
So
out.
that was one of our big conversations when Eric was hired, the education fund and protecting it. So.
Sorry to have helped raise that rate and move that shift, the burden to debt service, but I think our students and our staff and our school community is worth it. and people
Absolutely.
support our students
Right.
and our staff and our,
Yep.
what's
Yes.
that?
Well, that's,
Yes, they are.
They're worth the
Absolutely.
very best we can give them,
Absolutely.
so.
they are.
We
So
have
we're
just
going to be
tried
talking
to-
with you here soon
Well-
about that after all this is
Yeah,
done.
yeah. But we've tried to stay, tax neutral
For
and keep
so
it,
long.
for so long, and we have done that. We've done a very good job of that, but, like I said, so we think everyone deserves the very best,
We
absolutely.
do. We think we want the best for our students.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
And it's legitimate, and that's why it gave us a great opportunity to explain, this is where we're at, and this is our battle, and we have got to commit to doing more over the next 5, 10 years. This isn't over. This project that we're getting ready to embark on, this resolution, with the building corporation and with building a new school, doing that type of stuff, all of that is just the first step for making us more fiscally solvent and in a better position to take care of our school community for years to come and to take care of our people. So I did appreciate the question. It's a good one. Anybody else up here?
All right. Moving along, action item. Do we have a motion to approve resolution 467, authorization to transfer appropriations between sub and major account?
I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 467.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 467. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one is Resolution 468. I make a recommendation to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a motion to approve resolution 468, the 2025 budget resolution?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution 468, the 2025 budget resolution. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I recommend on action item 3, the approval of Resolution 469.
I do have a question on that, Matt and Eric, if we could discuss that, because I already had a question, even prior to Ms. Polson's question or her concern. So I know July through December, we have, the $2.4 million here, and I know we still have a couple months to go with that. But is it possible to split this out, like, I'm actually going to make a motion to ask to split this out so that we can look at maybe truer numbers from January through December? Like, would it be okay to split this out or maybe table this until next month where we might have some truer numbers for the January through December 2025? Is there any chance like that number would change? I mean, obviously we want to take out
It
as
could
least as
go
we
down,
can.
but it gives us the approval no matter what it comes in at.
Yeah.
So we're in a tight time frame, trying to close out the end of the year books, all that stuff.
Sure.
So my recommendation would be to go ahead and approve it. If we come in lower, that's great. If we don't, we have the authorization to make the transfers that are necessary. We call them, from our end, on the business side, it's housekeeping,
Right.
to make
right.
sure that you have the authority to be able
Right.
to make the transfers.
And I get that. I know we're on a tight timeline, so that's
Yeah.
why I just want to make sure, that obviously we're always looking for ways to make that number
Right.
less, but also want to make sure you have the authority to do that too, because we're not going to, we don't meet every week. So,
Correct.
okay. I just wanted to clarify some of that.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion to accept Resolution 469, anticipated July through December 2024 and 2025 transfers between the Educational Fund and the Operations Fund?
I'll make a motion. We approve Resolution 469.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 469. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Next one is Resolution 470, the bus replacement plan. And this goes right along with our discussion with the bond that we've written that will eventually be totally approved. A bus replacement is actually in it. You can move it to long-term. It's like buying a car instead of doing it out of operations. And that would help. So we have that to be able to try to protect education fund on transfers. So it goes hand in glove with that. So I recommend approval of the bus replacement plan.
Okay, do I have a motion for the Resolution 470 bus replacement plan?
I'll make a motion, Matt, to approve the resolution 470 for the bus replacement plan.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for Resolution 470 budget replacement plan. Any question? All in favor of motion Resolution 470, the bus replacement plan, signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one is 471, Capital Projects Fund Plan. I recommend approval.
Okay. We have Resolution 471, the Capital Projects Fund Plan. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second for Resolution 471, the Capital Projects Fund Plan. Any questions? All in favor of Resolution 471, Capital Projects Fund Plan, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next one's action item number 6, Resolution 472, Appropriations and Tax Rates. I recommend approval.
Okay, do I have a motion for Resolution 472, Appropriations and Tax Rates?
I'll make a motion to pass Resolution 472.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Luke.
Go ahead, Jack.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 472, Appropriations and Tax Rates. Are there any questions? There's been a motion and a second to approve Resolution 472, Appropriations and Tax Rates. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one is action item number 7. Jacob, can I get you to step back to the mic, please? It's a resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds, and I'll let him speak to it.
Sure, yeah, just very briefly. So Jacob with Bose McKinney and Evans. So the resolution, this is the last authorization for you all, this and the appropriation resolution, which is your next item. But again, this authorizes the issuance of bonds in the amount not to exceed $94,600,000, or sorry, $960,000. In one or more series, it authorizes bond anticipation notes if necessary. It authorizes the sale of the bonds upon recommendations of Baker Tilly. It authorizes an offering document, a disclosure agreement, and all the necessary closing documents. The building corporation met just before your board meeting and adopted a similar resolution authorizing the issuance of the bonds. So again, this is the last step. As far as closing timing, after your last meeting, when you signed your lease, we put out a notice, and that there's a 30-day period where folks could remonstrate against that. That runs October 25th. Baker Tilly has a rating agency call lined up for us in about 2 weeks, and we would look to close on the bonds prior to the end of the year. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know you guys have been through this. So.
Any questions?
I think we've been through it.
I will say, I think the way it's written, at least the Exhibit A, it's written very broadly so that it really encompasses almost anything that would need to be addressed.
Right, and I think the idea was that you have those two main projects, the natatorium and the elementary school, and that's what you'd spend the lion's share of the funds on. But Mr. Boland wanted to make sure that if funds are left over, we can get a good deal on the big projects, that funds can be used for other things, and we don't have to come back and do another authorization. So we tried to write that as broadly as possible. So
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the additional appropriations resolution?
It would be, I think first is the resolution authorizing
Oh, I'm sorry,
the
I skipped.
issuance of the bonds, number 7,
I'll
item
make a
7.
motion.
Sorry about that.
That's
I'll
okay.
second that, Matt.
Okay, we have a resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds. I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one is action item 8, which deals with additional appropriation resolution, which goes with the building corp, if I'm not mistaken, Jacob.
So again, this is just the affirmative action to appropriate the funds into your budget so that you can spend them once the bonds are issued.
I recommend approval of action item 8, additional appropriations resolution.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the additional appropriations resolution?
I'll make a motion, Matt, to approve the additional appropriation resolution.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the additional appropriation resolution. Are there any questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion for the additional appropriation resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one's action item number 9, which is an Indiana Department of Education robotics grant in the amount of $58,583.96. They don't want to hear the rest of this riveting meeting. Thank you. I recommend approval. This supports our robotics initiative throughout the district.
Do I have a motion to approve the IDOE robotics grant for $58,583.96?
I'll make a motion that we approve the IDOE robotics grant.
I'll second that, Matt.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the IDOE robotics grant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you. Mrs. Lips reminded me that was a competitive grant, so our team did a good job writing that, and they were very complimentary of our submittal. The next two I'm going to put together, number 10 and 11. It's the Whole Kids Garden Grant, one going to Brooklyn and one going to Centerton in the amount of $3,000 each. It helps them create a garden space and provide professional development for staff. I recommend approval of those two grants.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor of approving the Whole Kids Garden Grant for Brooklyn and Centerton Elementary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next one is action item 12, Martinsville High School Athletics agreement with BSN Adidas. I recommend approval.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the MHS Athletics BSN Adidas agreement?
I'll make a motion to accept the MHS Athletics BSN and Adidas agreement.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the MHS Athletics BSN Adidas agreement. Are there any questions? All those in favor of the MHS Athletics BSN Adidas agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Action items 13 through 18, I will read the individual donations. Once again, we're very grateful for all the generous donations to our students and staff. We have a donation from the First Presbyterian Church to negative meal balances in the amount of $1,000. Donation from Candy Kitchen to Martinsville High School Athletics, $250. Donation from KJS Properties to Martinsville Athletics, $1,000. Donation from Dairy Queen to Martinsville High School Athletics for $1,500. Donation from Subway to Martinsville High School Athletics, $1,500. And a donation from Colts to MHS Athletics in the amount of $2,000. Once again, thank you to these wonderful organizations for supporting our student athletes, our student participants, and our schools. I recommend approval of all of the donations.
Do I have a motion for a recommendation for the approval of all the donations?
I make a motion we approve all the donations.
I'll second that, Matt.
We have a motion and a second to approve all the donations. Any questions? All those in favor of approving all the donations signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have public comments. Do we have anybody that would like to speak? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Julie Reeves, born and raised in Martinsville, graduate of MHS, proud parent of 2 MHS graduates and community member. I'd like to challenge those who say that our school board is not transparent. 3 to 3.5 years ago, you implemented the following procedures. The agenda and all board documents are available online 48 hours prior to regular session board meetings. All regular session board meetings are live streamed. Regular session board meetings are recorded and available for later viewing for the convenience of all. And there's time for community, like me tonight, to speak at board meetings, and this was established before it was state mandated. I'd also like to challenge those who say that this board doesn't encourage enough collaboration between the district and community partners. This is certainly not an exhaustive list of organizations that we currently collaborate with. United Way, Habitat for Humanity, Rotary, Keller Williams Realty, Bailey and Wood Financial Group, Duke Energy, Home Bank, Hope Alight, Youth First, Adult and Child, Better Community Coalition, Community Foundation of Morgan County, Ed Minim, Morgan County Commissioners, Morgan County Prosecutor's Office, Morgan County Probation Department, Kendrick Foundation, Craig Finneman, YMCA, the City of Martinsville, Martinsville Police Department, Martinsville City Court, Morgan County Leadership Academy, Teachers Warehouse. Finally, I'd like to challenge those who say that this board needs to focus more on better programming and safety initiatives for our students and less on athletic facilities. Here are just a few of the many things you have worked for and approved in the last 4 years. Our anti-bullying campaign, bringing back the weekday religious education program for grades 3 and 4 district-wide, improved district attendance procedures, truancy officer on staff, vape sensors at Wooden Middle School and MHS, Verkada guest for safer check-in, creation of MSD of Martinsville Police Department, Science of Reading program with literacy coach at Paragon and South Elementaries, K-12 STEM and Project Lead the Way curriculum, Indiana apprenticeship program with Senator Rod Bray, 21st Century Learning Grant opportunity for after-school programming, On My Way pre-K at all 7 elementary schools, alternative education program at Wooden Middle School, anti-substance abuse program grades 7 through 12, Paxton Patterson career programming at Wooden Middle School, increased special education programming K through 12, the robotics showcase district-wide, introduction to engineering for high school credit at Wooden Middle School, countless new programs added at MHS alone, too many to get in my 3-minute allotment time. Your hard work is noticed. Your dedication is appreciated, and you are supported. There will always be naysayers, but Artesians bleed red and blue, not purple. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reeves. Next.
Well, the first thing I want to say tonight is Lisa and Brad from School Bus Organization. They need a big hand because they've bent over backwards and made everybody happy. Both of them's driving. All the mechanics are driving. We're not like teachers. We got nobody to fall back on for substitutes, guys. Because we don't have the money to fall back on for substitute drivers.
Well, let's give them that round of applause you're talking.
That was my guess back a while ago. So anyway, I got some other questions going along. You know, they're talking about the school boards. Well, you know, everybody has to say change school boards to keep making things motivating on. And I had told one time, a person told me, he said, Bill, if you're going to run for an office, you're only good for about 4 to 5 years with your new ideals. And then you kick the can down the road to somebody else that's got 4 or 5 more years with different ideals and to move the board down further along the road. Because you stay in the same thing, you become stale. But you put new people moving on down the road over 4 or 5 years, you get a whole lot better, different perspective on what you're doing. And granted, you guys have done a great job, but you also got new members or new people running that might want to be on down the road a little further. So and some of the stuff she said a while ago was state organized, state mandated, state everything. So you guys got credit for some of the stuff that she said. And then I want to say, I'm looking forward to having new coaches this year. This is going to be a new year for some people to have new coaches in certain sports that we haven't had for a long time. And I mean, our football team is doing fantastic. I'm looking forward for our basketball team to do fantastic this year with a new coach and new people with better interest. And then I got one question I get a lot of from people that we got, and it came up last board meeting, that the assistants, a lot of football players or football coaches, basketball coaches, all want to be assistants to the coach, to the athletic director. Now then, if we're giving all these other guys jobs to do to help the athletic director, why is the director's job going to stay as high as they're going to come down with all these people donating stipends off of their money, and the director's getting by with doing less work because he's got all these assistants and all these sports doing his work for him? That's a lot of questions about that, on that particular thing. And the open town board meeting, community board meeting we had out there at Eastview, or Liberty, was a great meeting. It showed some people people can sometimes control their talents and their spirits and their anger sometimes. So it showed a good deal from the community, plus the board members that participated and the future people that are running for the board and the previous board now that's done a good job of showing your way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Carl Wagner, 42 years public educator, 38 at Martinsville, 30 years as an English teacher, 8 years in the SSC. And Bill, I'm sure as heck glad that they didn't kick me down the road after 5 years, because I have no doubt that I did my best years of teaching my last 5 years, particularly my last year. I went out on top. And I'm hoping this isn't my last year, but sometimes I wonder if I'm doing any good. And I think that's the conscience of a lot of teachers. We want to make a difference. And I think we have a school board that wants to make a difference. And first of all, I need to apologize to all my former English students and current ones, because I am not prepared. No lesson plans here. I had a tough time, and thank God for Stephen Crane and the newspaper, because I was able to find out some of the things from the meeting. And so I wanted to address some of those things. One, the budget, Mr. Bolin did a great job with that. It's complicated. We've got at least a couple financial minds up there. Something that wasn't brought up is all the money that goes to the charter schools. So the state legislatures can talk all they want about how after dropping the budget like 25 years ago, they brought it up to these incredible levels, and a large majority of that is going to charter schools. But enough on that. CRT, just one thing, it doesn't exist. I'm not going to argue with people about that. I mean, I've been an English teacher, and I've been to high school wherever it doesn't exist. Nepotism, the notion of that just kind of drives me crazy when I see that in here. I am the only one in this room that was at the hiring meeting for Coach Staggs. And I went in there a little skeptical myself, because I thought, how could somebody be an athletic director and a coach? And I was freaking floored. I thought, oh my God, the presentation he gave, and I've talked to him about that years. And as a coach myself, I've had my disagreements. I've had disagreements with all these people up here. Mr. Bolin and Mr. Lips have probably made me madder than they could ever imagine, and I bet I've driven them crazy. But you know what? The same is true for my wife, and I'm not married to Mrs. Lips or Mr. Bolin, thank goodness. But those people we expect the most from and want the most from are the most capable of letting us down, but also being there for us. And so, I just want to say Coach Staggs was totally qualified, and Mrs. Staggs just came on the school board 3.5 years ago, and Coach Staggs has been here forever and a day. And Dave Knuckles, silly notion. I mean, he and Mrs. Adams certainly complete each other, and they're better for that. But he was at Martinsville long before she got here. So people who don't know better, and they throw that kind of stuff out. And I can go on down the line about this kind of stuff. And, I can go back to before Mr. Robertson was made the interim superintendent. I wrote a letter of recommendation for somebody that wasn't hired. There were 2 people that were finalists, was my understanding. I wrote for one that wasn't hired. But you know what? I go on with that. We have our disagreements. We work together. And I'm one of those, I've been making this trip for all these years because I believe in this school. George Schultz, his grandchildren, former ambassador and also Secretary of State. His granddaughter went to school with with my daughter, and I'm good friends with his daughter. There's one lesson I learned early and then returned over and over. Trust is the coin of the realm. When trust was in the room, whatever room that was, the family room, the school room, the locker room, the office room, the government room, or the military room, good things happen. When trust was not in the room, good things did not happen. Everything else is details. So when I see in the paper somebody's questioning integrity, by golly, that makes me mad. Attack any of these 5 people up here for anything but their integrity.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
Well, 7 people, whatever. I'm at 5 school boards. I can count.
I'm not saying anything on that. I was next door to him for too long. I didn't know I made him that mad, though. I liked him. I thought.
You're up, Superintendent.
Oh, I'm up. How do I follow
Follow that.
Holy cow. That's what it was like working next to Carl. They hated walking down our hallway, didn't they, Carl, in the morning? We were both morning people. We loved it. We drove a lot of people crazy. And okay, fall break next week. That's one thing. Don't send your students, your children to school next week, even though you want to, some of you out there. We have fall break the 14th through the 18th. We hope and wish everybody a restful, rejuvenating fall break, and hope you get to spend time with family and friends. I will say this, I've had some reports from some of our former students who are linemen and also tree cutters that are down in Florida right now. So during this time of fall break, keep them, all the first responders, all the tree trimmers, all the linemen, electricians, keep them in your thoughts and prayers. A lot of our kids are down there taking care of helping our neighbors to the south. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really, really proud of that. Congratulations to the girls golf team, which we already mentioned. The cross country team winning the county meet. Also, we have our boys soccer team competing Saturday night for their first sectional championship competition in 14 years. They've had a great year, and they're playing that purple team from the south, my alma mater. Shh, don't tell anybody. The Bloomington South Panthers, 7 o'clock at Bloomington South. So hopefully there's not any home cooking down there to take care of that. But we wish the boys soccer team continued success. They've had an unbelievable year, unbelievable year. We also, speaking of unbelievable, we're going to be putting on at the high school auditorium Phantom of the Opera. It's going to be showcased this year. 2 different weekends, November 8th, 9th, and then 15th, 16th. Those are all at 7 p.m. November 8, 9, and 15, 16 at 7 p.m. Then they have the matinees on November 10th and the 17th at 3 p.m. So you've got 6 chances to go see this wonderful production. And there are 2 different casts. Some are overlapping, but there are 2 different casts. So I'm anxious to see both casts perform because those students deserve our support and adoration for how well they do. They are phenomenal, talented individuals. That's all I have. Believe it or not, I'm done.
Okay. Now is the time for board member comments. So do I have any board member comments?
Well, Eric keeps stealing it, but all my thoughts, you must be reading my mind. No, I
Don't
I
tell
know.
Phil.
Well, I do want to say thanks for honoring the 74 team last week at the football game. I know it meant a lot to my father-in-law and to everyone who was there. So thank you for the school district for doing that because he really enjoyed that evening and he hadn't been out for a while. So that was great. So great that everyone could show up for that. Also, I wanted to say have an enjoyable and safe fall break. I know a lot of people probably were planning on going to Florida. Maybe some of those trips may be still on, maybe some not. But with that being said, I also want to keep all of the victims in your thoughts and prayers. I mean, we all have our, issues and our own personal things that we deal with, but those people are devastated. The ones who've lost their life, it's just awful. It's tragic. And I applaud, I know we've had some local people here that have taken some semis down with donations and still more to go. And so I just appreciate what they've done and how our community has rallied and gets behind these tragedies, because even though we had the flood here, which is equally as devastating, you know, I just can't imagine, you know, the businesses and the homes and the things and the life. So just continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers if you would.
Any other board comments?
I just will say, yesterday morning, we had several parent-teacher conferences at a couple different schools, and it was nice to walk down the hall and just hear conversations as you walk down. We really have a fantastic group of teachers. We really do. And I think we have a fantastic group of parents or caregivers that are involved with their kids' education. So that is important. Truthfully, it starts at home. That's where the foundation has to come from. But we have definitely strong partners in the school district. And I will say too, one thing that I had heard a lot about just a couple weeks ago when we had our school board association superintendent meeting, and I appreciate all of my colleagues up here, Mr. Bull, Mrs. Lip, Mr. Mays, who helped get the On My Way pre-K program up and started, and to get the level 3 distinction. Once you have a good idea, people will probably steal it. So I can guarantee you that's probably going to be state mandated within the next 3 to 4 years. But hopefully, and I would think they probably would look at us as one of the examples to follow with that. So thank you, everybody up here with me, everybody who's not here who had a much of a bigger hand in that.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Dairy Queen. Because they do half price blizzards after football wins, and our football team is undefeated right now. So funny story. So we go over after the game Friday, and one of the owners, I'm in the drive-through ordering, and he comes running through the back door, and he starts yelling, "It's half price blizzards!" And they're all cheering, and it was just so fun to watch that business celebrating with our high school football team. And then to the fire department, get those trucks ready, because I think we're gonna win Saturday with
Yep.
our soccer team.
I
So
do too.
get ready. Hopefully we can celebrate with them, and if we do, we host regionals next Thursday. So have a safe fall break.
Any others? Okay, I'll end. I did want to mention, Jackie mentioned it earlier, the 1974-75 football team. That was quite something to see all the former, I didn't play much, but I was there.
Were you a
during-
bench
when I
warmer, Matt? Were you a bench
graduated in
warmer?
79,
The
but
water boy.
my coaches were there, and seeing Coach Eric, Coach Hannaford, missing Coach Siderwitz, but the tribute that Maryland gave to those players, and seeing old players that I played with, even some like Ken Mask, was just very special. Another thing I'd like to mention, people at Perrigan appreciated so much our artisan drum line coming to perform in the Perrigan homecoming, our cheerleaders, and I know, Mr. Bolin, I'm missing somebody else. There was the cheerleaders, and there seemed like there was another Martinsville High School group, and I can't remember. Do you remember?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Well, I know it was the cheerleaders and the drum line, and if there was anyone else, but I know the Perrigan homecoming people really appreciated the community. You know, they appreciate when the students are in the community. The Fall Foliage Festival is this Sunday, the parade, so I know there'll be a lot of Martinsville High School groups in that as well. Mooresville tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at Mooresville High School to cheer on the Artisans. We are still undefeated. Let's hope we continue that in the battle for the M's. And that's all I have.
Thank you for the comments on the 74-75 celebration homecoming. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't thank Mr. Bell, the administration
Yes.
team
Yes.
at the high school, and Kip for putting that
Yes.
all together. What a
Yes.
phenomenal event that they did. So great job there. And speaking on the athletic thing, I forward to the board often exemplary reports from IHSA. And I don't know how many I've forwarded to you this year for our coaches' conduct, our athletic directors' professionalism, or our players' conduct. We've had a handful of exemplary reports that come from the IHSA where they notice how we're doing, what we're doing, and how well we're doing it. And that's so nice to be able to share. I wish I had one to read to you. I thought I had one printed out. There's my forgetful nature. I didn't bring it down here. I was going to read it
Well, we've had
publicly.
2 just this week.
Yes, 2
Yes.
this week alone. So
Yeah.
it's been very good. Artesian pride, Artesian nation should be proud of how we represent. So great job, Artesians. Go Artesians this weekend.
Exactly. Next, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I was, but Luke was waiting, so. I'll second that, Matt.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.